Simon stopped him after just 10 seconds. But what this Filipino Elvis did next shocked the entire world, a voice no one expected, a moment AGT will never forget. Stay till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Verse for more emotional stories. The auditorium lights dimmed, casting a warm glow across the massive AGT stage. Thousands of hopeful faces stared down from the packed audience seats, waiting for the next performance. Excited chatter filled the air, half nerves, half anticipation, while the cameras glided quietly across the room, capturing every emotion like silent hunters. Backstage, a young Filipino contestant stood alone, gently tapping his foot against the floor. He wasn't tapping to release nerves, though he definitely had them, but to keep the rhythm of the Elvis song he'd practiced for months, maybe even years. The worn-down soles of his shoes told the story of countless rehearsals, late-night walks home, and the journey that brought him here. He took one final breath and whispered something to himself in Filipino, words only he knew, but they carried the weight of family, sacrifice, and hope. A stagehand touched his shoulder and smiled, signaling it was time. As he stepped forward, the overwhelming brightness of the stage lights momentarily blinded him. But as his eyes adjusted, the vastness of the AGT theater came into focus. Rows upon rows of eager audience members stared back at him. The judge's table gleamed under the light. Sophia leaned forward with curiosity. Heidi smiled with her usual warmth. Howie adjusted his glasses. And then, there was Simon. Simon Cowell, the one judge he had feared the most and admired the longest. The boy inhaled deeply, steadying his trembling hands. The mic stand in front of him felt too tall, too cold, but when he gripped it, something inside him settled, like this was exactly where he was meant to be. He introduced himself in a soft voice. "Hello, I'm from the Philippines, and today, I'll be singing an Elvis song." The audience clapped, some cheering loudly at the mention of Elvis. There was something charming and humble in his tone, enough for the judges to lean in with interest. He gave a nervous smile, nodded to the music team, and the familiar intro of the Elvis classic began. The melody echoed through the massive hall, instantly recognizable, instantly nostalgic. He closed his eyes, and then he sang. His voice started steady but shy, thin at first, like a bird testing its wings. It carried the signature Elvis tone he had worked so hard to imitate, the deep resonance, the controlled vibrato, the faint southern twang. The crowd reacted instantly, cheers rising here and there, scattered claps of encouragement. For about 10 seconds, everything seemed perfect, until Simon raised his hand. Not a small gesture, not a subtle cue, a full commanding stop. The music cut off abruptly. The cameramen froze. The audience gasped, confused, shocked, whispering among themselves. The young Filipino singer opened his eyes, confused, his body going stiff, heart pounding so loud he could hear it echoing in his chest. He stared at Simon, terrified to speak. Had he done something wrong? Was his voice not good enough? Was he already being rejected before he even reached the chorus? The silence in the room felt like a thick blanket, too heavy to breathe under. Simon tilted his head slightly, not unkindly, but with the same intense curiosity he showed during moments that later became AGT history. He leaned closer to his microphone, tapping his fingers together as he studied the contestant. "Can I ask you something?" Simon said, his voice echoing across the hall. The boy swallowed. Yes, sir. You love Elvis?" "Yes, very much. You've practiced him for a long time, haven't you?" "Yes." Simon nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "And you're good at it. Really good, actually, but—" He paused long enough for the tension to become unbearable. "Right now, I don't want to hear Elvis." The boy blinked, unsure how to respond. Simon continued, his tone strangely gentle. "I want to hear you, your real voice, your real story, not a copy of someone else's." The words hit harder than any criticism. This was it, his turning point, his moment of truth. The crowd suddenly grew quiet, hanging on to every second. Even the judges seemed unsure where this was going. Heidi's eyebrows lifted. Sophia whispered something to Howie, and he just shrugged, equally curious. The boy felt his throat tighten. He had practiced Elvis songs for so long that he feared his own voice might not be enough. Back home in the Philippines, Elvis was what made people stop and listen. Elvis was what helped him earn coins while singing on the street. Elvis was the voice that brought smiles to tired faces and hope to his small community. Without Elvis, who was he? Simon's voice softened. "Start again. Forget Elvis. Forget everything. Just sing, as you—" The boy looked down at the floor. His hands were shaking now, not from fear of failure, but from the pressure of suddenly being asked to be vulnerable, open, raw. Behind him, the big HD logo glowed brighter, almost like it was urging him forward. He tightened his grip on the microphone. He took a breath, his deepest one yet. He closed his eyes once more. And in that split second, he made a decision. He would sing not for perfection, not for imitation, not even for the judges. He would sing for the little boy who once sang barefoot outside his grandmother's house, for the family watching this moment on a small TV back home, for himself. The entire world felt like it was holding its breath as he prepared to start again, this time, not as Elvis, but as the Filipino dreamer with a voice waiting to be heard. The hall was silent, so silent that the tiny tap of the boy adjusting his foot on the stage echoed through the vast theater. The audience waited, breathless, and the judges leaned forward with anticipation. Even Simon, who had just stopped him moments earlier, softened his usual sharp expression. Something was about to happen. Something different. The Filipino contestant stood there, clutching the microphone as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. His heart pounded against his ribs, painfully loud. The pressure of thousands of eyes watching him felt heavier than any weight he had ever carried. But somewhere deep inside, right beneath the fear, something else began to rise, a small spark he hadn't listened to in years. His own voice, his own sound. He opened his eyes slowly, scanning the room. Nobody was rushing him. Nobody was losing patience. The audience wasn't booing or judging. They were hoping. Hoping he would start again. Hoping he would sing. Hoping he would become the version of himself he'd been too scared to show. He looked at Simon, still intimidating, still powerful, but behind those eyes was a rare softness. Simon nodded once, encouraging him silently. The boy nodded back. And then he let go. He lifted the microphone, inhaled deeply, and when his voice emerged, it was nothing like Elvis. It was warm, trembling, emotional, like the first ray of light breaking through dark clouds. The first note rolled through the hall, delicate but filled with sincerity. It caught the audience off guard. They weren't expecting this. How could someone sound so different just moments after being stopped? He wasn't performing now. He wasn't imitating. He was revealing. As he continued, his voice began to blossom, slowly gaining richness and depth. If his Elvis impression had been polished and technically impressive, this was lived experience. It had texture. It had pain. It had hope. The judges immediately reacted. Howie's eyebrows shot up. "What? Wow," he whispered. Heidi covered her mouth with her hand, eyes widening as the unexpected transformation unfolded. Sophia leaned forward as if trying to get closer to the boy's soul through his voice. And Simon, his expression shifted from curiosity to something far more profound. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't analyzing. He was listening. Deeply. Because the boy wasn't just singing a song now. He was telling a story. Every lyric seemed woven with memories. Long bus rides home after singing for tourists. The weight of helping his struggling family. The joy of finding comfort in music when the world felt heavy. His voice cracked slightly on a high note, not because he lacked skill, but because he felt the emotion so strongly it spilled into the sound. The audience didn't judge it, they embraced it. Several people in the front row gasped softly, their hands flying to their chests. Halfway into the verse, something incredible happened. The boy's posture changed. He straightened his back, not from confidence, but because he finally realized he no longer needed to hide. He opened his eyes more often now, allowing them to meet the crowd. And every time they did, a connection grew stronger. He stepped forward, just one small step, but it felt monumental. That single step electrified the room. The stage lights adjusted automatically, casting a soft glow around him as if the universe itself was spotlighting this moment. The orchestra behind him picked up his rhythm, not overpowering, just supporting. For the first time, they weren't accompanying Filipino Elvis, they were supporting him. His voice grew bolder, climbing to notes even he didn't know he could hit. He improvised slightly, adding gentle runs that weren't part of the original song. It was raw artistry, pure, unfiltered, and undeniably his. The audience erupted for the first time. into applause mid-performance. People rose from their seats, clapping to the beat. Someone in the balcony shouted, "Yes, that's IT!" A woman near the front wiped tears from her eyes as she recorded the moment on her phone, sensing she was witnessing something special. But the most powerful reaction wasn't from the crowd. It was the judges. Sophia shook her head in disbelief, whispering to herself, "He's incredible." Heidi looked emotional, blinking rapidly to keep her tears from falling. Howie leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. And Simon. Simon's eyes softened, not with sentimentality, but with pride. It was the same expression he had worn in some of AGT's most iconic moments, moments when a contestant revealed their true brilliance after being pushed. He nodded, as if saying, "That's it. That's who you really are." As the boy entered the chorus, he transformed entirely. His voice soared, strong, resonant, fearless. He let out a long, sustained note that echoed off the walls, filling every corner of the arena. It wasn't technically perfect, but it was breathtaking. Then came the emotional shift. He slowed down during the bridge, allowing the song to breathe. His voice softened again, almost a whisper, carrying vulnerability that made the entire hall lean in. Even the camera operator seemed mesmerized, panning slowly to capture every nuance. Every word he sang was like a confession, summoning memories he had buried, the struggles his mother endured, the nights he sang to forget hunger, the dreams he'd carried across oceans just to stand on this stage. His throat tightened again, but this time, he didn't fight it. He let the emotion crack through lightly, adding authenticity that no vocal lesson could ever teach. And then, as the final chorus approached, the atmosphere shifted again. The lights brightened. The orchestra swelled. He opened his arms slightly, stepping forward fully into the center of the stage, no longer small or timid. He belted the final lines with every ounce of strength in his heart. By the time his last note rippled across the auditorium, the audience was already on their feet. A thunderous standing ovation erupted. People cheering, clapping, whistling, shouting his name despite not even knowing it moments earlier. The boy stood there, breathing heavily, stunned. His chest rose and fell as he took in the overwhelming sight, thousands of people standing, applauding, celebrating his voice, his real voice. He lowered the microphone slowly, staring into the lights as tears threatened to fall. He had sung for the first time without impersonation, and the world had listened. He looked toward the judges, but their reactions would come in scene 3, because right now, this moment was his alone. The moment his true voice finally awoke. The applause thundered through the auditorium like a tidal wave, powerful, relentless, overflowing. The young Filipino contestant stood in the center of the AGT stage, breathless and overwhelmed, staring out at the sea of cheering faces. For a moment, the world around him blurred, and all he could hear was the thumping of his own heart, still racing from the performance he had just given. But this was only the beginning. As the cheers slowly softened into expectant silence, the boy lifted his head. He saw something he never expected to see, something that almost made his knees buckle. Simon Cowell was standing, not clapping, not yet, but standing. And in AGT history, a moment like that meant one thing. The performance had shifted into a league of its own. The boy's breath caught in his throat. He clutched the microphone tightly as the music team restarted a soft instrumental bed behind him, expecting him to finish the performance properly. But what no one expected, not the judges, not the audience, not even the boy himself, was how he would transform the second half of his audition. The lights shifted to a warm amber glow, highlighting the golden edges of the stage. It felt like a sunrise, hopeful, bright, full of promise. The boy took one step forward, and something inside him clicked. He wasn't just singing anymore. He was performing, and the stage came alive under his feet. He glanced at the audience, then back at the judges, a tiny smile slipping onto his lips. He wasn't nervous now. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't copying Elvis. He was honoring him, celebrating him, while fully embracing who he was. The music picked up, a mix of classic rock and roll rhythm with a modern twist, the perfect blend for someone who carried Elvis's spirit, but brought his own soul to the stage. He moved effortlessly to the beat, hips swaying with subtle swagger, not an imitation, but pure confidence. The crowd reacted instantly. Laughter, cheers, whistles. He wasn't just turning the stage upside down, He was taking full ownership of it. He spun lightly on his heel, stepping into the brighter spotlight, and belted a note so strong that it sent ripples through the audience. The microphone picked up the raw emotion, amplifying it through every corner of the arena. People clapped along to the rhythm, slow at first, then louder, then faster. A ripple formed in the crowd, then a wave, then a storm. By the time he slid into the final chorus, the whole auditorium was on its feet again. The boy's voice soared, now completely free, no fear, no imitation, just his soul on display. Each lyric felt like a declaration of victory. I'm here, I'm me, and I belong. He threw in a playful vocal run, short, unexpected, bold, a risk. And the audience erupted. Simon's eyebrows shot up. Heidi gasped. Sophia placed both hands on her chest. Howie pointed at the boy with wide eyes as if silently saying, "Do you see this?" Then the boy did something magical. He switched languages mid-riff, a short Filipino line, smooth, soulful, powerful, glided effortlessly out of his mouth and into the warm air of the arena. It was only a few seconds long, but it was enough to make the crowd go absolutely wild. They didn't need to understand the words. They felt them. For the Filipino families watching across the world, it was a moment they would replay again and again. He was no longer a contestant trying to impress judges. He was an artist sharing his heritage, his identity, his heart. The lights behind him exploded into brilliant blues and golds, swirling like galaxies across the stage floor. The music swelled into its final build, and with one last burst of energy, he hit the last note, a long, soulful, earth-shaking note that seemed to burn itself into the hearts of everyone listening. Silence, a charged, breathless, electric silence. And then, the room exploded. Cheers, screams, thunderous applause, stomping, whistling, people waving signs, audience members jumping up and down, unable to contain themselves. It was not just a standing ovation, it was a celebration. Sophia was wiping tears from her eyes. Heidi was clapping above her head. Howie kept shaking his head in disbelief. And Simon was grinning, a real, proud, moved grin. He stepped forward and pressed the microphone button. "Okay," Simon began, silencing the crowd just slightly. "I'm going to be honest with you. When you first started, I thought you were good. But after I stopped you, something incredible happened." The boy swallowed hard, eyes glossy with emotion. Simon pointed at him. "You didn't just recover, you transformed. You absolutely turned this entire stage upside down." The crowd roared. Simon wasn't done. "You reminded us of something important," he continued. "It's not about copying greatness. It's about discovering your own greatness. And today, you did that." The boy's lips trembled. He nodded, overwhelmed. Heidi leaned into her microphone. "That was beautiful," she said softly. "Your voice gave me chills. And your heart—" "Oh my goodness, I felt every word," Sophia added. "You have magic. Real magic. The kind that can't be taught." Howie chimed in with a dramatic flourish. "I think Elvis would be proud." Laughter and cheers echoed again. Simon looked at the other judges, then at the boy. The arena fell silent once more. "I'll make this simple," Simon said. "You are a star!" The crowd screamed with approval. And as the judges prepared to vote, the boy stood there, tears flowing freely, not of sadness but of triumph. He had come to the stage as Filipino Elvis, but now he was leaving the stage as someone far more powerful, his true self, his true voice, his true story. He didn't just perform, he created a moment, one that AGT and the world would never forget.